Load shedding could well lead to food shortages for many people if urgent interventions are not taken. That is according to Christo, the Chief Executive Officer at Agri Sa. He joins us from Pretoria to discuss the impact of rolling blackouts on food security and the declining capacity of South Africa's farmers to produce food. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. van der Rheede, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Maybe just give us a broad sense of how big the issue is when it comes to load shedding and the production of food in South Africa at the moment.
The latest statistic shows that food inflation has increased to approximately 14%. This is the highest level it has reached for the past 2 decades. And that for us is a very big concern. It means that food is becoming very, very expensive. And we've seen it also in the April figures that your vegetables, your dairy products, as well as meat products, these products have all increased over time. Remember now, vegetable farmers, as well as dairy farmers and meat farmers, all of them depend on electricity. In fact, the entire value chain, from input suppliers to your farmers, to your processors, as well as your retailers, all of them depend on electricity for the processing of food or to keep the products in cold storage facilities. And due to the fact that Eskom cannot supply electricity on a consistent basis, farmers and retailers, as well as processors, all of the players throughout the agricultural value chain have to fork out money to buy diesel, to install diesel generators, as well as solar panels. And this has become a major cost driver that pushes up the price of food at the end of the day. Internationally, we have seen an opposite trend. In South Africa, due to load shedding, we have seen that food prices are just increasing, and that for us has now become a major concern.
And Mr. van der Rheede, we've seen that big retailers like Shoprite, for example, have been able to absorb some of the increasing costs that have become associated with the production and, of course, the delivery of food to different retailers across the country. But smaller farmers, the producers as well as the manufacturers, are not going to be able to absorb those costs for much longer. So you did mention the rising cost of food, but just give us a sense of what consumers can expect when it comes to paying more for basic food like maize, as an example.
Remember, farmers are price takers. Farmers do not determine the price that your consumers pay ultimately. Farmers produce a raw product. In other words, they produce maize or wheat or any other grains and meat, those products then go to a processor where it's being packaged and processed for consumption. And that is where the costs are added, because now it must be processed, it must be packaged, it must be kept in a cold storage facility. And if the cold chain is in any way compromised, the retailers or whoever must then throw that product away. Yes, South Africa has been very fortunate in that we've got very good farmers. Our farmers have produced a record amount of grains in the region of 15 million tons of maize, also approximately 2 million tons of soya, and our farmers, to a very large extent, have secured that we also have a very good wheat crop. Although we import wheat from other countries, our farmers came to the table. So it's not our farmers' fault that we are going to see or that we are experiencing an increase in cost. Remember, there's other factors. Petroleum has gone up. The exchange rate has gone, the dollar exchange rate has made imports more expensive. Then, in addition, we've seen national minimum wage go up. Also, packaging costs, shipping costs. So it's a toxic mix that lead to the increase in food prices. And yes, it's our consumers that are suffering. We hope that we will see a decrease in prices in the foreseeable future. But if load shedding continues at this rate, where on a daily basis we are confronted with load shedding level 6 and even higher, that is certainly going to not reduce prices, is going to push up prices due to the fact that farmers must, and the entire value chain must now step in to, to cover for Eskom and the fact that they cannot deliver electricity on a consistent basis.
You have mentioned an important point there that we already do import some crops. It has been in reports over the last few days that Ukraine has got an excess of maize that the European Union is now importing into their different territories. Is this something that South Africa would consider given the issues that farmers are facing, or would that further add to the detriment of what farmers are going through at the moment?
Remember, we already import certain products. We are not a producer of rice, for example. We are not a producer of palm oil. And we have in the past imported a lot of edible oils like sunflower oil and wheat from Ukraine. South Africa is not self-sufficient in that regard. But we are self-sufficient in most other products, such as meat, maize, such as soya, also fruit and vegetables. But if the cost of production becomes too high, then farmers will consider whether they should continue farming or whether they should reduce the number of hectares that they plant, because the sums at the end of the day do not add up. What I want to emphasize is not land that produces food, it's expertise. And South Africa do have the kind of expertise that we do not find in many other countries. So we need to protect and nurture that expertise. If you look at what the US government is doing, the EU government is doing, they provide producer support to their farmers. And in our case, yes, we understand we have liberalized the agricultural economy, but all that we ask is solve the electricity crisis, solve the roads issues that we're experiencing, make sure that our harvests are effectively operating, and make sure that we also establish or restore law and order in the rural areas, because farmers and their workers are all vulnerable at this point in time. As I've said earlier, we need the support of government and we need firm leadership to address these issues.
What about what needs to be done now? You say there needs to be an addressing of these issues that you've just highlighted to us. But what kind of tangible steps can be taken in the immediate term, Mr. van der Rheede? We do know that there was a national state of disaster on energy, which government was forced to withdraw. We don't know exactly what that did to the energy crisis. But putting that aside, because it's no longer in place, what are the immediate steps that can be taken to try and form some form of reprieve for those who have been impacted by the crisis, as you've just described?
Well, in the first place, you have two departments that are responsible for energy as well as for overseeing Eskom. That is the Minister of Public Enterprises, responsible for Eskom and ensuring that Eskom functions effectively, and that the most competent people are appointed at Eskom. On the other hand, you've got the Minister of Energy that's responsible for attracting more investment in terms of solar energy, ensuring that IPPs come on board. And I think collaboration between these two ministries are important. And then the presidency has appointed the Minister of Electricity. It's very important that the Minister of Electricity gets the necessary legislative framework so that he can push through the resolutions that he has in mind. But there's a bit of a turf war going on between these different ministries. And that's why we want the presidency to step in and say, now I draw a line in the sand, this is what I want to do. I really want to commend the Minister of Agriculture. She put a task team together. The task team advised her in terms of what the agriculture sector needs in terms of legislative interventions, and also ensuring that we find a way of alleviating the pressure on the agriculture sector, especially the irrigation and processing sectors, subsectors. But the Minister of Agriculture's mandate is limited. The work and and the implementation of these resolutions that rest with the three ministers that are directly responsible for electricity generation, for the ensuring that the steps or the necessary interventions are implemented, which the presidency has announced last year already. So our big question is, when are we going to see these things being implemented? Because at this point in time, it is really now becoming a crisis for the sector.
Thank you very much for those insights. That is AgriSA's Christo joining us this afternoon to speak about the impact that load shedding is having on food security in the country, but also on the producers of food and how they have had to navigate the crisis that we currently find ourselves in.